G'day mate, 40 here in Manly, listening to Alex Kaschuta in Romania interview Steve Saylor about how has California changed him. Well, fish don't know how swimming in the water has changed them. So if you've lived in California almost all your life, like Steve Saylor, you're not going to be very good at articulating how California has changed you. But
trading ship going up and down the coast of California. And he came back, he wrote a bestseller called 2 Years Before the Mast. And one of the things he told the American audience was, California, wow, it's like the best place, and practically nobody lives there. He especially emphasized the San Francisco Bay Area as barely interest of the Mexican government. Nobody's there, and it's incredible. So, over the centuries, the population's grown dramatically, and unsurprisingly, it's gotten really expensive. So, you know, in a lot of ways, it's a higher class place, and I was growing up in kind of, you know, Beach Boys childhood. It's also gotten fewer eccentrics probably today than, you know, today it's kind of Florida man in California, and represents kind of a cutting edge of weirdness in the United States. But you know, those are two obvious changes. The golden age.
so you can still usually create a pretty good life for yourself, California, but definitely it's become much more expensive. There's much more crime. The state is run by the left.
Yeah, it's I wonder because you know it's California is seen as a just extremely left-wing place. Have you ever been a left-winger? Have you ever considered yourself a man of the left?
Thinking maybe for a couple of weeks when I was about 12. In general, I've always been some kind of conservative by temperament. You know, my father was an aircraft engineer in Lockheed, so it was natural to, you know, my environment too.
And Steve Saylor's adopted, so many of our political orientations and cultural and religious orientations have a substantial, or not so much religious, but cultural and political orientations have a substantial genetic component. So let's see if I can find my way here. Dance between the waves. Get back up. Get me to higher ground. Whoa. Okay, I'm stuffed. Oh shit. Oh, that wave got me. Here we go. Ouch. Here we go. Whew. It's not easy going where no man has gone before.
I think by temperament, I've always been kind of a loyalist, and you know, kind of leaning toward the conservative side. But on the other hand, you know, I've never been particularly strongly.
It's losing a bit of its shine.
Yeah.
So I had like a 2-3 year flirtation with Marxism when I was at college and university because you know, I had some very eloquent professors and it sounded interesting, and so I really got into it 2 or 3 years. But aside from that, I pretty much always had a fairly right-wing predisposition, you know, recognizing that hierarchy is natural, that traditional ways of doing things usually are more trustworthy than innovative ways of doing things, organizing community and families.
Somebody was mentioning, that basically, I'm not part of the younger generation that's interested in European political philosophers. I grew up as kind of an Anglophile, Adam Smith.
Yeah, I think I grew up kind of as an Anglophile too. Haven't had a huge interest in the European philosophers, maybe just a moderate one for people like Carl Schmitt, but probably Adam Smith has had a more profound effect on me.
Johnson and so forth as a teenager. And whereas, the kind of continental names, like Carl Schmitt and so forth, it's before my time. And so, I'm not that up on recent ideologies. And I'm not even that ideological. I'm more empirical. As I've gotten older and had time to write my Excel spreadsheets of data, that takes up most of my interest. Highly ideological questions.
So I noticed when I started studying economics seriously and calculus and the kind of higher mathematics that I largely lost my appreciation for poetry and literature. So Steve Saylor did an MBA, found he had a natural inclination towards statistics, and you find you're good at something and you start doing it a lot, you start doing it for a living, that shapes you. And so I think his MBA and business analysis has substantially shaped who he is today.
Maybe some more eccentric conclusions. So I think that's why I don't think people mind that you're not into Carl Schmitt or whatever esoteric politics, because I feel like you're obviously, one of us in some way, even for the theory people, because you come to similar conclusions just by interpreting.
Yeah, I mean, my approach is sort of to think that there's a general continuum rather than a sharp dichotomy at different intellectual levels. That if you're doing something that makes sense, if at the social science level, it's also going to make sense in terms of your real estate decision making. That if you say, oh, okay, yeah, that's a good neighborhood, good schools, things like that, it's going to show up exactly in the social science data. And if you're going to take it to higher intellectual levels than that, they all want to fit.
So Steve's not the exciting thinker that Richard Spencer is. Generally speaking, he's much more grounded. It's much more realistic. It's much more practical. So, normally listening to this would find that makes sense. You might even find it boring.
Fit together and not contradict each other. I mean, a lot of people in the kind of conventional wisdom these days assume that there's some extreme contradiction and dichotomy between following the science and stereotypes, what people notice, what they're lining up.
So, Steve doesn't say anything particularly new or surprising in this whole interview. I didn't, wasn't surprised by one thing that he said. It's just that Steve is so consistently right. I think that's what makes him so impressive. So consistently right, and so consistently important, and consistently level-headed.
I don't think so. I mean, for example, I've been a social science aficionado since maybe I was 13 in 1972, and I just like reading, academic papers that churn through a lot of data. Most people assume that they have to come to highly leftist conclusions but it sure doesn't look like that to me when I read them carefully and critically. It sure looks like, oh yeah, that's connected to what people say about local crime rates or schools or whatever. That there isn't this sharp contradiction. So that's I think that's something I try to bring is tie together the anecdotal, social scientific, and the.
So it'd be funny if I get stuck in a higher tide here and have to end up swimming for it, trying to hold $2,000 worth of electronic equipment, above the water.
More ideological.
Yeah.
It should all fit together. It shouldn't contradict each other. If it does, you probably got a big problem.
There's a lot of labor, and it kind of takes a knack for analyzing this data, and also just liking the time you spend doing it. And I don't think that many people are into it as much as you are.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. It takes, but yeah, here in the U.S. For the last half century, there's been a big movement of guys like me to analyze baseball statistics in ever more sophisticated fashion. And, I'm fascinated by it, but I'm not at their level. But, I kind of follow the Bill James's, the baseball statistical world, just working with, social data for realms. So, yeah, that's kind of who I am in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I also think that there's
Tide's coming
a
in.
level of status in
Gotta run for it.
in going deep into ideology and reading the classics and coming to the same relatively more unsavory conclusions that someone with lower status might get. Like your uncle has the same beliefs as Carl Schmitt, but you need to slog through 500 pages of esoteric literature before you can admit that, or you can kind of associate yourself with those.
So is there going to be a path up here? Or, uh-oh. Am I going to be stuck down here? Am I going to have to swim for it? Okay, so I severely doubt that your uncle just came to the same conclusions as Carl Schmitt, right? I don't think that's going to happen. All right, ready to make a jump for it? Oh shit. Wow, this is slick. My shoes are slick. Let's see where we end up here. All right, so you can't just intuit Carl Schmitt. I don't really think that people's uncles are going to come to the same conclusion as Carl. Or John Locke, or Rousseau, or Gramsci. Okay. How far? Uh-oh, looks like we've reached the end of the line here, folks. Time to turn around, climb back up. Okay. What can I do here? Okay, maybe I have to run along here if I don't mind getting wet. So maybe if I time it right, maybe the prudent thing would be to just turn around. Got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. Boy, I really did not bring the right climbing shoes. Okay. Ha 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 ha. Here we go. Here we go. Whoa. Oh. Ah. Okay, we're still recording even though we got splashed. Got a seek shoulder here on higher ground. Man on the run. Not willing to just do the same boring walk I've done before. Not going to allow a little high tide to intimidate me. Probably climb up there would be easiest.